What's up guys, it's Eric from Rare Candy and welcome back to another deck profile, and today we are kicking off our Forbidden Light deck coverage, and today we are looking at Ultra Necrozma Malamar. Definitely I think one of the more hype new archetypes that has come out of this set. And actually guys, if you did miss it, we did post a recent testing rounds video featuring this deck in action, so if you guys want to see how this deck actually looks in action, definitely go check out that video. I will have a link below in the description as well. And also too, if you guys are unfamiliar with those testing rounds videos that we do here on the channel, they typically feature kind of our early unrefined rough starting points to begin testing from. So that might mean there are a few things in this list that could potentially be tweaked or improved on. So just something to keep in mind as we do go through this deck profile. So Ultra Necrozma, almost said Magnus there, Malamar. Definitely, like I said, one of the more hype new archetypes out of Forbidden Light. So let's take a look at it. So Ultra Necrozma is going to be our main attacker. We're playing 3 of this guy, 190 hit points. Pretty solid there. Fairy weakness, so you might have to watch out for those pesky Gardevoir GX at some point. 2 retreat costs, not too terrible. But the reason we're taking a look at this card is for its first attack, Photon Geyser, for a Metal and Psychic Energy. You discard all basic Psychic Energy attached to Ultra Necrozma, and the attack does 20 plus 80 more for every energy discarded in this way. So very similar to the old Rayquaza EX way back from Dragons Exalted, but you know, a little bit better and more up to date for the state of the game today. So let's just go through the numbers real quick. If you discard 2 Psychic Energy, you're doing 180 damage, which is actually pretty important. With a Choice Band, you can hit for 110, which is also super important because that's a great number that a lot of these Stage 1 GXs have as far as how much hit points they have. And also, if you need to knock out some Stage 2 Pokemon, if you discard 3 energy, that'll be enough to knock out most Stage 2 Pokemon that are out there as well. So super strong attack. We're aiming just to take big one-hit knockouts, just nuke our opponent turn after turn with this guy. And he does also have a GX move as well. Not the greatest GX move, but there are certain instances where you might use it. For the same attack cost, if the total number of prizes in play is 6 or less, then you get to put 6 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So not that great in this deck since we're trying to, like I said, just take one-hit knockouts every turn, but it is nice that you do have the option to at least use it if you choose to. But like I said, Photon Guys are definitely the star of the show. But of course, the big downside to this attack is you have to get rid of your energy every turn. So how are we going to get that energy back? And that is going to be thanks to the new Malamar in this set. So we're playing 4 Inkay, of course. That is going to be the new Inkay from Forbidden Light. And then, of course, 4 Malamar as well. So Malamar has this nice ability. I don't know the name of it. These are just Japanese proxies, so I do apologize for that, guys. But once during your turn before you attack, you may attach a Psychic Energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. So there you go. Discard your Psychic Energy every turn and use Malamar to kind of recharge your board. And this ability does stack, so that means if we get out multiple Malamar in play at a time, then we can get multiple Psychic Energies back in a single turn. So that's kind of the entire engine of the deck and the the core strategy that we have going on here. And one thing you guys might be thinking of, that is kind of a thick Malamar count. Do you guys, do you really have that much space on your bench? But I really like the 4-4 count because if you are only playing a 3-3 line and you prize one of the Inkays or Malamars, you're only limited to 2 for the whole game until you draw some out of your prizes or recycle Pokemon through Rescue Stretcher and things like that. So I definitely like the 4-4 count so far. Next up, we are playing a couple of other support Pokemon. We're playing 1 copy of Mew from Fates Collide. So we're playing this one. It has that Memories of Dawn ability. You get to use the attacks of your basic Pokemon that you have in play, but of course you need the correct energy for them. So what's nice about this is it kind of allows our Necrozmas to sit safely on our bench, and we can actually take 2 prizes at a time with this little 1 prize attacker in the form of Mew, which is really nice. So especially if our opponent has knocked out a couple of Necrozmas, we can force them into a 7 prize game by attacking with this guy. Another reason I like it, also has free retreat, which is really nice. So you can safely promote Mew sometimes in between turns whenever your opponent knocks something out, and then you can use Malamar, attach a bunch of energy to a bench Pokemon, and freely retreat into that Pokemon. So like I said, just kind of a nice little attacker to force a 7 prize game, and the retreat cost is nice as well. Then next up, we are also playing 1 copy of Dawnwing's Necrozma. Definitely not a super popular card, but definitely one I really like in this deck. We're mainly playing it for that invasion ability. So once during your turn, before you attack, if Dawnwings is on your bench, you may make it your active Pokemon. And why that is so good here is because if we use our Ultra Necrozma to take a knockout, we dump all of our energy, and we're stranded in the active spot without a way to get it charged back up. But if you have Ultra Necrozma with a float stone, you can just use Invasion to come into the active spot, recharge your Ultra Necrozmas with your Malamars, and then free retreat back into Ultra Necrozma to keep nuking your opponent and taking more prize cards. So that's the primary reason we're playing this, but we actually can make use of both of Ultra Necrozma's attacks. It's normal attack Dark Flash for 3 Psychic. This is 120 and it's not affected by resistance, so just a decent little 2-shotting attack. Also has Moon's Eclipse GX, again for 3 Psychic Energy is 180. You can only use this attack if you are behind on prizes, meaning your opponent is ahead of the game. And then Ultra Necrozma actually can't be damaged on your next turn. I believe it's effects of attacks as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, all effects of attacks, including damage, and most importantly, done to Ultra Necrozma on the next turn. So super, super good GX attack. Actually, I think it's probably preferable to the one Ultra Necrozma has. So it has a great ability and a better GX attack than our Ultra Necrozmas. So definitely a card I really, really like in this list. And then just to round out the Pokemon line, just 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX, of course for that Wonder Tag ability, and of course we can use Energy Drive and Tapu Cure GX as well if we choose to, just because Tapu Cure takes Psychic Energy, and that's what we are playing in this deck, and Energy Drive just requires colorless energies, but primarily for that Wonder Tag ability. And one reason we're only playing the 2 copy of Tapu Lele is really just because bench space is super precious. We really don't want a bunch of Leles on our field at a given time. So that's why we're only playing the 2 count of Lele here. That's it for the Pokemon line. Pretty streamlined, not too many crazy bells and whistles. You know, we have our Mew in there, but other than that, that's really the only, I think, weird tech. I think Dawn Wings is almost like integral to the deck strategy. So, you know, nothing too crazy there. Moving on to our supporters, though, we're playing 4 copies of Professor Sycamore. Of course, discard our hand and draw 7. So just the best draw supporter we currently have in the game, I think. And also you get to dump Psychic Energies in the discard pile to get out with Malamar at some point as well. But then we're also playing 3 copies of Cynthia and 3 copies of N as well, just to give ourselves some shuffle draw options. So one reason you guys might be thinking, well, wait, you're playing a ton of draw supporters. Is this really necessary? We're playing 10 in total. And the reason for that is, like I mentioned, bench space, super precious in this deck. We really just don't want to bench Tapu Leles if we don't have to. Ideally, we'd like to go the whole game without even needing to bench them. So playing more actual physical draw supporters is definitely going to be preferable in this type of deck, especially since we don't have anything like an Octillery or a Rangaroo to kind of supplement our draw power in any way. But so, you know, playing 10 draw supporters, like I said, we're kind of favoring Sycamore here just because it has probably the most synergy with the strategy of the deck. But then we're also playing 3 copies of Guzma as well, just to choose what we want to take knockouts on. And honestly, there's even some games where I wish I had a 4th Guzma, so maybe that's something you guys can experiment with as well. Just because, you know, like I mentioned, you get to dump all of your energy with Ultra Necrozma whenever you attack. And maybe if your Necrozma is prized, or maybe you're going against a Zoroark deck and you don't want to bench it because of that dark weakness, something like a Guzma is actually really nice because you can Guzma up something and get your Necrozma back on the bench to get energy back onto it. So like I said, Guzma, really good card just in general, but in this deck especially, I wouldn't even mind a 4th one. So like I said, guys, feel free to try that out. And then the last support is just going to be 1 copy of Bridget here. And you guys also might be thinking, well, most decks are playing usually around 2 copies of Bridget. Zoroark decks are even playing like 3 or 4. So this seems a little bit low. And the reason for that is we'll get into just momentarily, but we run a ton of search cards in this deck. So that's really a really important thing, but we are still playing the 1 Bridget just to get our basic Pokemon into play as soon as possible. But speaking of search cards, we have a new card from Forbidden Light. It's going to be Mystery Treasure. So it's a new item card. You discard 1 card from your hand and search your deck for a Psychic or Dragon Pokemon. So basically this is a strict upgrade to Ultra Ball, but it's really nice because we can still dump energy and other things in the discard pile if we need to, and we can actually run this alongside Ultra Ball as well, which we are doing. So we're playing 3 Ultra Ball as well. So in total we have 7 different ways to search out our Pokemon in this deck. So that's why I was kind of saying with Bridget, I think the 1 count is fine just because we have so many other ways to get out our Pokemon. So even if we prize Bridget, we still run a ton of ways to actually get set up. So I'm really liking this entire engine, just like the general flow of the deck right now. Mystery Treasure just seems so good in here. Once you use it, you'll feel like you're cheating almost, just because you don't have to discard 1 card from your hand. unlike Ultra Ball, which is still a great card, but you have to discard 2. So, you know, seems pretty good though. I'm liking the general, like I said, the general flow of this engine. So next up though, we have 4 copies of Floatstone, of course just to give our Pokemon free retreat. Our board in this game is kind of clunky sometimes, and everything has kind of an awkward retreat cost, so always having an out to retreating is going to be very important, especially if you have to dump all your energy off an Ultra Necrozma, and you need to be able to retreat into a fresh one on the following turn. So 4 Floatstone, definitely super, super good here. Like I said, also if we throw in down on Dawnwing's Necrozma, we can give basically our whole board free retreat thanks to Invasion. Next up though, we are still playing 2 copies of Choice Band. This card actually might seem like a little redundant because maybe in theory it's like, well, you can just put a ton of energy on Ultra Necrozma. You can take one-hit knockouts already. Do you really need Choice Band? And honestly, I think it's still really good because it's 1 less energy you have to commit to knocking out Stage 1 GXs. Like I mentioned earlier, if you discard only 2 Psychic Energy, you're going to be hitting for 180. But with the Choice Band, that's going to bump those numbers up to 210. So you can maybe get that extra energy that would normally go on Necrozma. You can put it somewhere else on your board. Maybe start setting up your next attacker. So Choice Band's still good. That's why we're only playing the kind of a lower count of it though, just because it's only really useful in a couple of these situations like I was mentioning where you want to discard only 2 energies to knock out Stage 1 GXs. Next up, we're playing 2 copies of Field Blower, of course to discard tool cards and stadiums. This is actually a card I would even consider going up to 3 of, just because there's a few things that are really going to hurt this deck in particular. That's going to be Parallel City and Garbotox and Garbage, shutting off your abilities. So like I said, I almost wouldn't mind a 3rd out to a Field Blower, just in case we hit a deck like that, because bench space, very precious. Parallel City is going to wreak havoc against us. The deck is also insanely ability reliant, so being able to get rid of the tool cards on Garbers is going to be very big as well. The 2 count seems okay, but like I said, if you guys can find room for a 3rd one, by all means, go for it. Next up, we're playing another new card from Forbidden Light. This one is going to be Beast Ring. So this is another, I think, very powerful item card that Forbidden Light is giving us. You can only play it if your opponent has 3 or 4 prizes remaining, but you get to search your deck for 2 basic energies and attach them to one of your Ultra Beast, which is pretty cool because after your opponent knocks out your first Ultra Necrozma, especially if you don't have all of your Malamars online just yet, you can play Beast Ring and get a Metal and Psychic Energy already on another Ultra Necrozma ready to go. So definitely a really cool card that kind of shifts the tempo a little bit back in your favor once your opponent starts taking knockouts. Playing 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher and 1 copy of Super Rod as well. So just some nice little recovery options. And you guys might be thinking, well, why are you playing Super Rod? You can already retrieve energy out of the discard pile with Malamar, so wouldn't that be better served just as a second Rescue Stretcher or just cut it for something else? And the reason we're playing Super Rod though is because we are still playing some basic metal energies, and we're not playing a whole lot. And you have to remember, Malamar can actually not retrieve metal energies out of the discard pile, only psychic energies. So having a Super Rod to be able to get back those metal energies is actually going to be really nice. I would actually probably cut the Rescue Stretcher before I cut Super Rod just for that reason alone. And then to round out the training cards, we have 1 copy of Parallel City. So it's one of those cool dual effect cards. Depending on which way the stadium is facing, it has a different effect for each player. So most importantly though, whoever has the blue side facing them, they can only have 3 benched Pokemon. And we're playing this mainly for the mirror match and then other decks that rely on a heavy bench. But you'd have to imagine if you can get down Parallel City in the mirror match, you're definitely going to be favored just because bench space is so precious in this deck. So that's why we are playing the 1 count of Parallel City. So then going on to our energy cards, guys, we have 4 copies of Metal Energy. Like I mentioned, we still need some metal to be able to use Ultra Necrozma, but you know what? We don't really need that many in order to make the deck tick. So that's why we're playing kind of a lower count. And then to round out the list, we're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of Psychic Energy as well, just to finish fulfilling the attack costs of all of our attackers. But yeah, guys, that's going to be the list that we're going to be trying out here. Definitely one of my favorite new archetypes that has come out of Forbidden Light. There's a few things I definitely still want to try out in this list. One card I really want after finally getting some games in with this thing is getting a Professor's Letter somewhere in this list, just because I've had a couple games at this point where I'll whiff either the Psychic Energy or the Metal Energy to finish powering up an Ultra Necrozma to take a knockout. So that is definitely a card I would probably find space for before anything else. Like I said, I'd also like a 4th Guzma with like a 3rd Field Blower, but I think having Professor's Letter is going to be more important than either of those additions. So like I said, that's probably what I'd make my first cut for if I was going to change anything here. But it should still be a decent little foundation for you guys to start testing with if you want to try this deck out. But yeah, so that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this one. Definitely stay tuned for the channel. We're going to have a ton of Forbidden Light coverage coming up over the next several weeks. And like I mentioned earlier, I will have a link below to the testing rounds video this deck was featured in if you want to see it in action as well. But as usual, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you can support this channel by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or by picking up something from our online store at rarecandytcg.com, it'd be greatly appreciated. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.